All right, we're back. I'm set up at Temple Fitness, of course, because I've done podcasts when I'm here before. I got my mobility tonight. I got a couple clients right now. It's like 3:35. I got a client at 4, so I can't go over 25 minutes. And I'm very big on being efficient and avoiding dead time. And so I carry my laptop with me, I carry my mic stuff with me, and I just never know when I'm going to have a chance. If I get here a little early, maybe I have time to do a podcast. If not, I got other paperwork. Now I have to bring the camera with me, of course, and it was being a little pain in the butt to set up, so hopefully it is okay. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So this is the background. If you are watching, then you can see. Although it's not about Temple, it's just I happen to be in here for today. Today's topic is on the Lindy effect. Funny enough, I have a client named Lindy, but it's not about her. But what is the Lindy effect? It's a concept that says that the longer something has been around, the more likely it is to stick around, right? In fitness, workouts, philosophies, and tools that have stood the test of time are probably worth your attention, right? So if you've ever wondered why some of the workouts that runners do, it's always going to be the same thing. Weightlifting, it's always the same thing. Others, remember the vibrating belt, right? That disappeared very fast. Other fitness trends, curves, for example, they come and go. And so they didn't stand the test of time. And so if something standed the test of time for 30 years, it's probably worth guessing that it's going to stand the test of time for another 30 years. And so I want to talk about that with fitness and tools and traditional fitness versus the new side of things, which there is value to new side, but we will see if it succeeds the test of time, that things that have been around for hundreds of years. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, is another way for me to say it. So let's start with the legends of fitness, specific with time-tested practices. For example, barbells. So I'll kind of use barbells as a standpoint. I'll use a client. They're nervous when it comes to all of the options, right? Specifically one in mind, very big on social media. And they always see influencers doing crazy workouts with tons of resistance bands and BOSU balls, the F45, the Orange Theory, and they just seem frustrated with it, right? The other aspect of it is that the client wants to try all of that, which is fine. It's just not going to be that effective. And once I introduced them to just some barbell work, I was like, well, why don't you invest in a barbell and we'll just do some basic 5x5 with barbell stuff. At first, she's intimidated, right? Isn't that for bodybuilders? Isn't that for strongman? I was like, well, yes, but you're going to get great results with just that tool. What if we just focused on barbell squats, lunges, rows, presses, bench press? In weeks, we went from more complicated programming to extremely simple stuff, and it changed my paradigm because all of a sudden they were getting really good strength gains, really good muscle gains just with basic movements. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense because barbells have been around for a long time. They're extremely effective. Again, it tests the time of the Lindy effect. It's a simple, effective tool that just works for everyone, beginners and elite athletes, right? And it's not just barbells that are like that. Dumbbells and kettlebells have been around for centuries. That's why they're a staple in the gym, and that's where a movements like squats, deadlifts, rows, and bench press, those have been around for a long time, with the tools like kettlebells, dumbbells, and barbells, also been around for a long time. And it's very traditional philosophies that have been around for a long time that work, that you just have to do. And everyone wants what's new, but looking back at, okay, well, what's actually worked for 100 years? Barbells have been around for well over that. If you look at old school strongman athletes, they would have had that. Dumbbells came from bells that were dumb because they didn't sound, but that actually turned into a kettlebell. And that, funny enough. And then dumbbells were different. But yeah, yoga. This is a good example too. Yoga's been a practice that's been around for a long, long time. Now, mobility training is kind of taking the principles from yoga and applying strength to it, which I think is important. But I'm never going to be upset if a client of mine wants to do yoga instead of mobility. Maybe they have a preference for it. This is where it's been around for such a long time. It stands to reason that yoga is going to continue to be around for a long, long time. And by no means am I comparing yoga with my mobility stuff. I enjoy my mobility stuff because there's a bit of a nuance to it. It's learning and it's adapting certain principles from strength training and applying it into these stretches to get more strength out of it. But for most people, that might be overwhelming. It might be too much to complicate. It might be too intense. And something as simple as yoga, they're never going to go wrong with it. It will solve, let's say, 80% of the problems that people have with mobility, and then I'll just use the mobility tools for the rest of the 20%, right? And I love the cat-cow. I think that's a movement that everybody should be able to do. And then same thing with upward dog, downward dog, a few hip openers, and all of a sudden, right, that simple practice that's been around for I want to say thousands of years, I have no idea actually, it's not going anywhere, and it's going to help so many people in the past. It's going to help so many people in the future. So let's talk about the new kid on the block. And there's always new fitness trends that pop up, and they're very tempting, right? They promise flashy, quick results, and they're all over social media. I'm going to pick on High Rocks here. High Rocks has not been around for that long. Yet, most of the people who do it look pretty ripped and shredded. Or do you think that the people that are ripped and shredded, that look good, are just going to perform really well at High Rocks, and that would draw in those sort of people who are just high performing, great genetics, great work ethic, have been working out for decades? And so they don't build a High Rocks body by doing High Rocks. They built it over the last decade or two, because I know some people who are in their 30s, they've been working out for close to 20 years. I'm 31. I've been working out for 18 years. You're going to build your body by so many more different modalities. You just now get to express it in that way. By no means do I think it's a bad idea to train for a High Rocks. I just don't think if you're not already at a really good fitness level, that is not the place to start. But a lot of people think that that's the place to start. I'm going to give another analogy here. If you are looking to become the CEO of a business one day, but you're fresh out of school, that is not your starting point. You're not going to look at what the CEO does because you're at entry level. You got to look at the next level. You got to look at the managers, your bosses. What do they do, and how can I get to that level? Then, when you're a manager, how can I look up the upper management and get to where they need to do? Then how do I look at the executives? And you got to go up it step by step, progressively overloaded. And that's the one thing I've had a really hard time of getting behind when people say, well, it's a one size fits all. Any style of that training, the hybrid training, the HIIT style training, it is not a one size fits all. It is not at all a good place to start. That being said, it also has not been around for that long, and I have the pulse that some of them are already going to be fading away. So that's the aspect I'm trying to get at, is the Lindy effect. When it comes to these newer races, they have to stand the test of time, which they have not. Now, let's go into another tool like watches. They've actually been around for a while, but not even just the watches. The metric of the watch that's been around for a while is a pedometer, a step watch, basically, or a step counter. And that's actually really important, but I believe most other aspects on your watch are overrated. Even something like a Whoop that measures recovery, that's still relatively new information that there's no guarantee that it's perfectly accurate. Your step count's actually perfectly accurate. We know how important steps are, and it's been around for, I want to say, at least 30 years. Like the pedometer, I don't know if it was in the 80s, but I want to say it was at least in the 90s. And it's 2026, so it's been around for a while. And I think that stuff is extremely important. I've had clients who've asked me, hey, do you wear a smartwatch? What do you recommend one? I want to track my steps. My response is, why would you pay $200 for a smartwatch if you don't want any of the other features? By the way, the other features aren't that important. You can get a $15 pedometer. Well, I want to wear something for my wrist. Okay, then what's the style you want? I don't like wearing one. I did order one for the walking challenge coming up. But overall, the other metrics don't matter nearly as much. And again, that kind of falls into the Lindy effect. I do want to talk about balancing the old with the new. The key is to stick to basics while experimenting with purpose. So again, I had another client who was a die-hard CrossFit person. They loved the intensity that it brought, the community and the variety of exercises. But after a couple years, they were telling me that they noticed some issues. They had constant soreness, their form was sloppy, they sent me some videos, and they did hit a plateau in their progress. And they had won a starter pack with me, and they're like, well, I thought that this would be a cool way to get some advice from a trainer to know how to progress. And I told him that CrossFit can be great, especially for the reasons he wanted it. You can still have functional fitness that's not CrossFit, but you do need just solid foundations always to support it. And so if all you do is CrossFit workouts, there's going to be blind spots. Myself as a trainer, I know I have blind spots, and that's why I do periodization, because I can't do all the blind spots at once. It's impossible. And so I constantly audit myself. What are my blind spots? What are my blind spots in my training, my business? And so from that standpoint, I asked him to scale back how many times he went to CrossFit. He had a monthly membership, so it's unlimited. I was like, why don't you get a class pack? And why don't you aim for 1 to 2 per week? And then why don't you invest in some home gym equipment and do some stuff there that can be more foundational? Because the foundation has been time tested. You got to do your basic mobility, tempo work, and progression, and then you can add in the intensity at CrossFit, but even then, scale it back just a wee bit at times. And so we focus more on barbell stuff, dumbbell stuff, mobility work, proper recovery, and after a few months, he bounces back quicker, stronger, less injury prone, right? He still does CrossFit, but he balances it out. It's not all CrossFit. And so the lesson here is that these new trends can be great, but they can be a complement. Again, the high rocks, that's maybe something that you train for a couple months, and then once you're done it, you leave it and you go into mobility for a while. And then you go into more strength training, and then you go into more powerlifting, and that's perfectly fine. Same thing with different modalities or different styles of training. If you're stuck at F45, Orange Theory, or CrossFit for honestly more than a year, the longest I would ever recommend someone doing a modality like that is 3 months, unless those gyms change their programming, which I know they don't. They say they do. It's the same thing wrapped in a different way. If I told you, hey, we're doing 35 seconds of work and 20 seconds of rest, but then tomorrow I'm like, hey, this is something completely different and mind-blowing. We're going to do 36 seconds of work and 24 seconds of rest. You'd be like, okay, it's the same fucking thing. It's a little bit different, but that's my exaggeration of what it essentially is. And that's my point. Today, we did a workout where it was closer to 2.5 minutes of rest. And people are like, wow, this was great. I thought it would be kind of easy, but it actually kicks my butt. 2.5 minutes. Then we're going to be going into something that's closer to like 30 seconds of rest, because that's still important to touch too. We just don't do it all the fucking time, because you need to have proper variety, not, I'm going to call it faux variety, faux progressive overload, faux change of pace. The Lindy effect teaches us that the best fitness practices have to be the ones that stood the test of time. Traditional strength tends to be in that, where you're doing 3 sets of 8 to 12 with a 4-2-2 tempo minute rest. Or you change a couple of those factors around a little bit, or you do a 4 to 6 reps, which is basically a 5x5, or you do a 5-3-1, or you do some powerlifting, or you do some strongman style. So this week, I'm going to challenge you to think about your workout programming. Has it been tested by time? And whether it's weightlifting, going for a run, trying yoga, experiment with something new and ask yourself, does this have the Lindy effect, right? And that's all we can ask for. Sorry that the camera cut off. I got clients soon anyway, so at least I recorded something in, and we'll do the best that we can. Till next time.